Hey, and welcome back. We're going to be talking about visual assets. Now, I promise you, visual assets will be a part of every single project you work on, whether it's imagery, illustrations, or iconography. Sometimes your clients may come to you with assets of their own. And the ugly truth is, sometimes they're really bad. It's something that we got to learn how to navigate. But let's get into something else. Projects and deadlines, just sometimes they move so quick and you don't have that budget to hire a photographer or even hire an illustrator. And that sucks. But if you do have budget and if you do have the time, please do hire a photographer. It does make a world of difference, especially even with illustrators as well. Please hire them if you do have that budget and that time. So sometimes you do get lucky. Sometimes you have amazing assets to work with, whether they're good photography like this. This is something I quickly put together with Unsplash, but if your client comes to you with something like this is something that's great to work with. Maybe they've had good photography done beforehand, maybe some illustration and iconography. I feel like iconography is never really the problem on this list. They generally trust a product designer or UX designer to do what's best. And the other scenario is that you're not so lucky. You may get stock photos. Stock photos are horrible. Some of them are okay, but most of them are bad, and please don't ever use them. This is the moment you should really sit down with your client or product team or both and talk about ways you can improve on that, because anything is really better than this. Now, there are a couple of resources that can help you. I really love using Unsplash. You can use their website, or you can use the Figma plugin, which we'll get into later. Now, this is totally free and you don't need to really credit anyone. All the images on here you can just use, and you can also just search by keyword. You can search randomly. You can search by category. They have a great foundry of imagery, and some of it's really amazing actually. For illustrations, I love using Figma plugins like Blush, Illustrations, and there's Humans. So these are really great. This is Blush over here. It will allow you to kind of mix and match some illustrations. The only thing is it's paid, but you can get a good sense of if you like an illustration and want to use it later. This is called Humans. This is another plugin that allows you to kind of piece together different types of scenarios. You can use like a head, whatever shirt you want, and we'll get into that as well. And Illustrations is another fun one. You'll get the SVG as well. As for Figma plugins, this is what's really great, and you can go out and buy illustrations as well, but sometimes they do get expensive. So I suggest using something like this and seeing where you can go from there. For icons, I love using material icons. They're easy to use. The website's easy to use. You can pick out whatever you want, whether the themes are filled, outlined, rounded, two-tone, or sharp. You have the ability to just search by whatever keyword you want, and you can easily grab an icon and upload that into Figma. Figma also has several plugins that we'll go over. One is called Iconify, and the other one, they do have a material design plugin that we can use as well. So let's jump right into Figma, and I'll show you how to work with different types of imagery and illustration and icons. Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are going to be talking about imagery and iconography. And when I talk about imagery, I'm talking about things like literal photos or illustrations like you see here. So this one's going to be a fun one. Let's jump in. We're going to talk about things like plugins for things like, finding images or finding illustrations and iconography. We're also going to learn about different things like styles for imagery and how to reuse those styles. Then we're going to understand how to use masks to cut out images. That's going to be super fun. And we're going to learn about things called vector networks, which are really going to help us make some custom shapes like you see here. So we'll be going through a bunch of exercises to test how to use these visual assets and some of the new plugins that we are going to talk about today. Let's jump in. Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we jump into some pretty cool things here and how to manipulate images, I have a couple of plugins that I want to showcase to you. So you may know some of them already, but the one that I want to talk about first is a plugin called Unsplash. So you're going to need this plugin to follow along with me. Here it is. It's called Unsplash. So you'll get that in the community section. So you just need to install that plugin. And this is what it looks like. You can come to the editorial section and, click an image that you'd like, and it's going to pop up right there. Or if you have like a frame or a rectangle or a shape, you can go ahead and select that image and it'll just pop right in there as a fill. So that is how Unsplash is going to work. You can search for different things, like if you want portraits, like I have one below, you'll be able to get those portraits really easily and without actually just leaving Figma, which is super, super helpful. So definitely grab this plugin called Unsplash. Now, the second plugin I want to talk about is called Remove Background. So I'm just grabbing this image here just for a quick demonstration. Now, here is the plugin. So you'll notice before you can actually use this plugin, you need to sign up for an account. It's a free account on their website. So you need to go ahead and set the API key. And once you have an account, they'll give you instructions on how to complete that. It's super easy. You just sign up for a free account. Then you'll go and copy this long key and you'll paste it into an input box right here when you click this button. So you'll just set that API key down here. Now, once you have that API key set, everything is going to be able to work. You need to first select an image, and it's going to only really work really well with images that have a nice clear background. So in this case, this lady here has a nice background right around her. We can either cut this out with the pen tool, which will take a long time. So you'll have to go something like this, over and over again, and it's going to take a long time, and you'll have to use masks to do it. But you can just right click, go to plugins, go to remove background and run. You'll see it running in the background right here. And there you go. So this is going to be really helpful if you have images that you just want to remove the background from, if you want to use them for landing pages or make some interesting layouts with like different elements around the image without that background. It's going to be super, super helpful. So those are the two plugins that you're going to need to follow along. So that is Unsplash and Remove Background. Hey everyone. Welcome back. We are going to be talking about image styles. Yep, just like color styles, typography styles, effect styles, there are also image styles, which basically function the same as color styles. And you may be thinking like, why the heck do I need now image styles? I mean, you don't necessarily need them per se, but it makes your life easier if you have some content that you're going to be repeating over and over again, and you just need to have some dynamic imagery. So you can imagine things like if you're on like a rental site and you have a bunch of home images, you just need something really quick to plug into each grid item. So that way you can easily make a layout that doesn't look like it's just filled in with placeholder content. Same thing with like this. I have these cards here, or this one card that could be repeated in a layout, and you don't want to have the same card repeated sometimes, especially if you're trying to show off your designs in your portfolio, if you want to show off, or you just want to show them to developers or your team as to like how things work. Sometimes like you just need that extra content, and to make it easier for yourself, you should make image styles. So let's jump in. So if you have the plugin called Unsplash, this is going to make your life easier for just finding imagery. So based off of my image here, I have this little card and it says safety tips and guidelines. So this is all about like travelers and, helping them stay safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to search up things like travel, and I'm going to just zoom out, and I'm going to create a couple of circles here. So I'm going to just have 4. And I'm going to select that circle and just pick random images that I think, that are very in line with this type of imagery that I'm searching for here. So there's this one. I think that's the one I already have. So that's great. then we can maybe have this one, and then we'll choose something like this. Okay, so we have 4 different options here. Now, how do you make image styles? So I'm going to close my plugin. I'm just going to come to this image here, and I'm going to go to fills, and I'm going to say image / you can just call it like card 1. So I'm going to copy that naming convention. I'm going to do the same here. But I'm going to say this one's 2. Because these are all just placeholders. They're not really like something that you're going to name or even really care about too much. Because when you're in your designs, you're just going to be like throwing them in really quickly. So there we go. I have my images. Super cool. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just expand my frame. And then I'm going to select my image or my card. And you see my background is the entire fill. So the whole auto layout frame just has the information here. And then it has this information behind it. So I'll show you how to make this card, but this fill is going to say, you know, image 1. Then I'm going to make a copy of this. And then this one will be image 2. Then make another copy. And then so on and so forth. That one's a nicer one. So basically, that is how you create image styles. You can easily go ahead and see your color styles here on the right sidebar. And you can edit them if you need to by just like, you know, adding the fill or removing a new fill or anything like that. You can customize it to, you know, be a bunch of things if you want to have like, you know, color styles on top of it. But that's how you create image styles within Figma. Hey everyone, and welcome back. I want to give you a quick tutorial on how to use masks. Super easy because we're going to be using them very quickly over here. So masks basically hide and show the different parts of an image that you really want to hide or show. So if I use my plugin over here just to grab an image from Unsplash. So I'm going to scroll through here. I'm going to use this image. Now I like this image. It's pretty cool. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to cut everything out. So you can do this by grabbing like anything. You can use masks with anything. They can be different shapes. They can be like pen, like vector shapes. You can use them with imagery. And the way they work is you're going to create the item that you want to be the actual like mask. And you're going to send that below. Send that to the back by just right clicking on it. And you know, you can send that to the back and there's the little shortcut. So it's behind the image over here. You can see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these layers and I'm going to click this button up top where the tooltip will show you as well the shortcut for the mask. And then it creates this group. It's a mask group. And then you can adjust the mask size. So you can show and hide whatever content you want. And you can also just go ahead and, you know, make that group as large as you want. That image is going to basically stay to the proportion and not show the content that you didn't want to show originally. So you can make custom masks with like the pen tool if you want to like, you know, make a weird shape or a specific shape. So I can make this as a mask as well if I wanted to. So I'm going to bring this out of that group and bring this behind it and create a mask. So now I select that layer and, you know, I can create some pretty cool masks. And that is how you use masks. So remember, your mask layer needs to be behind the thing that you want to cut out. It can be a text layer that you want to cut, or, you know, it could be an image like I just showed you, or another shape, but that is the basic anatomy of a mask. Hey everyone, welcome back. We are going to get into some image exploration. So I have a couple of images here in different variations of this like one image over here. And one of the tough things about being a designer for a web or just products in general is that you often have to use imagery, and then sometimes you just can't get nice imagery, and you have to resort to modifying it a bit or playing with it a bit to just make interesting layouts like this. And I'm going to show you different ways you can achieve that with plugins and also things like masks. So let's jump right in. So we have our image here available to us. You can use this image, you can use a different image. The reason why I'm using this image though is because it does have this nice clear background, so it's going to be easy for us to work with. So this is what I'm going to use. Let's just make a duplicate of that. So I'm going to do an Alt or Option drag over here. So the first thing I do is I'm going to make another copy right here, and I'm going to use my plugin, which is remove a background. So you should have this set up by now, and it's going to really help you, clean this up over here. So there we go. So we have this lady right here with no background. We're going to keep it as is. And then, another way we can kind of make some nice like visual interest is by like adding like a shape, like something simple like a square. And we can just use a gradient with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just call this my color square. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and send it to the back. So it's going to be behind her. Now, the thing is, her face, if you notice the lighting, like it still has like that purple lighting on her face. Like you can go in and try and fix that with like the image settings here. So if you want to like, try and, maybe even change that tint to something that's more on brand, like a blue, you can do that. You want to increase the highlights or decrease the highlights and the shadows. Like we can do stuff like that. So, feel free to do that as we're working through this together, but I'm going to keep it the same. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep this square right behind her. And then I am going to change this fill from a solid to a gradient. Where is it? There we go, linear. I want a linear gradient. And we are going to actually copy the values here with the color picker. So I have the very top one selected. So that's going to be at the very top. And I'm just going to go and zoom in, try to get something up here. So there we go. We already got some colors here, and it's just going to like play nicely with her face. That's more natural with that lighting. If you want to, like I said, like make a different color or adjust that lighting for her, you can do that. So I'm going to just make this a little bit lighter. And there we go. And you can see like we already have something pretty interesting that we didn't have before. You can make this lighter. You can now add like, shapes. If I have like, say this like circle shape over here that has like a stroke, but no inside. And maybe this is like, something like a bright yellow. And this one is like, I don't know, like a blue. Like you can add some pretty cool elements. So if I send that to the back and I send this shape to the back, just using that shortcut, we can select this and use our arrow keys. I'm using Shift, and we have some pretty cool like foreground and background elements going over here. So definitely play around with that to see if you want to create like a group, because then you can just take this item and just press Command or Control G. You can group it, call it our image, and then we can export it as a PNG with a transparent background. And there you go. And like you have like something really interesting to work with here. Now let's talk about this, because we're now going to actually take this lady. Oops. You can't really drag outside of groups, but we're going to take this lady over here and we are going to make that same box. So I'm going to actually copy this square and place it in front of her in a second, but I'm going to make a stroke. So say I have this gradient. It's a really nice gradient. You can apply gradients to strokes as well, but I'm going to actually select this like this on the side. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to go to my stroke and paste it. So I'm just going to delete that black and delete that. And then I'm going to bump up that stroke. And there you go. It looks exactly like the gradient that's there. If you actually click into it, it's still there. So I'm going to bring this out here in front. And I wanted to just like hide behind the back of her head a bit. But I also want to achieve this where, you know, it's on top of her body, but her head's coming out of the frame. So this is a pretty cool thing that we can do here. So the way we can do this is, let's see. So the way that I've done it here is I have this rectangle, just one. I have another version of the portrait. Oops. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I have another version of that portrait right here. So let me show you how it works. So basically this woman, we can just send her to the back, send this portrait to the front. Now we're going to select that woman. And what we're going to do here is we are going to make another copy of her. But now we're going to bring that copy to the front. So let's just group all these layers right here so we can see what we have. So now that I have the front, this is going to be the background. I'm just going to call this one front. You can call it foreground, whatever works for you. I'm going to actually go ahead and make a mask. So the mask is basically going to just come across here, and come across here, across here, and come across here. You can use the pen tool. You can use a shape tool. It doesn't really matter. You could have used a square to do this. And then I'm going to take off the stroke on my pen tool because the pen tool is automatically going to make a stroke there. So there we go. We have our mask. I'm going to call it as such. And then I'm going to send it to the back. And I'm going to use it with the front of this second layer on top. So as you can see, this mask group over here, let's just toggle it. What's happening here is my color, like square or border, is basically on top of the background photo. So that's why it's hidden over here on the arms. As soon as I made this copy of the background photo and brought it to the front, I took a mask and just wanted to show the top layer. So I'm going to hide this layer, which the background is still going to be here hid. But in this layer, now she's coming to the forefront. So it's kind of like layering two of those images on top of one another, but one is in the foreground and one isn't. And that's how you can create some pretty cool stuff with just masks, some plugins, and just a little bit of time. Hey everyone, we are going to be talking about how text and imagery start to work together. And you're going to have situations where you're going to have to either overlay that together or make like cards where, you know, there's enough contrast. And I'm going to show you how to do that over here in both landing page scenarios with like hero sections and just different variations of cards. So let's jump in. So sometimes we will run into scenarios, like I said, where we need to place text over imagery, and we run into a couple of problems with this scenario. The big problem is definitely contrast. It affects everything. What may work for one image is not going to work for another just because of contrast issues. So with that being said, like you may have a card over here where, you know, the image is like, right now there's not enough contrast, but in another image, you may have a bunch of contrast. So you may have to do some things where you ensure that there is enough contrast all the time. So let's take a look at what I mean, and I'm going to show you how you can do that in different ways in different scenarios. So right here, I have the landing page for a nice little startup or shop or whatever. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to, bump up that text. So always, like, one of the big things that you can do is, increase the size of your copy if you can, especially with hero images. And, just ensure that that's going to just be, it's going to fit nicely and, have enough contrast. One thing I do is I'm going to make another copy here, and you can follow along and I'll show you. So one thing that we can do with like just imagery in general is we can come in here. If you look at this frame, the frame background is actually the image. So that's going to be cool that we can leave that. So we can either just, we can add a gradient if we want. So I'll show you. So we can add a gradient like this. And it could be like a linear gradient. It could be a radial gradient. But just by adding like a little bit, just a little bit of a gradient increases that contrast pretty significantly. Let's make another version. So you can use gradients in different ways. If I say I wanted to create like a radial gradient, I can do that. Another way you can do that is just by like using solid fills. Now, it really depends on the imagery here, because solid fills can, look all right. This is what a solid fill looks like. So I've just decreased the opacity so that way you can see a bit of it, but it's going to net you like the best result here. Anything with like a solid fill is going to really help. Gradients are really going to help with things like, just retaining the nice imagery in the background while still giving you a little bit of that, that contrast that you need. This is going to give you the most contrast. You can also do another thing. You can take the color off right away, and you can just actually work on the actual image itself. If you need to create, like for heroes, this is going to work fine because, you may only have one hero image, but like you may want to like, increase or decrease the temperature and, mess around with some of the tints a bit, decrease the highlights, and maybe some of the shadows. And, if I look at the original and I look at here, like definitely much more contrast. So those are a couple different options you can use. So that is the gradient option, the solid fill, or the image option here. Now you can apply a lot of these to cards, but you basically only have two options here. I would say actually three, and I'm going to get through the three different options. So you may come into, into the scenario where you have like a card where text is placed above, or, you choose to place it above, which is totally fine. So you can, deploy that same type of tactic where you have a, linear fill. And let's set that linear fill to 100%. Then we can modify it on the individual level of the parts here. So you can come up with like something like this where, it's like a combination of, gradient and fill. You still get the image in the background, but now you get the contrast that you need. And, you can even mess with your UI elements. One thing I love, I've started doing this a bit too, is like just like white buttons are pretty cool as well. I love just the the contrast and the pop it has in comparison to sometimes the black button. So that's an option as well. Now, if you want to go the route of just having like a fill like this, where it's like maybe 50%, like that one is going to give you a big boost. And then you can obviously just have, the other great thing about this is like you can specify the color if there's like a brand theme. You want it to be a little bit more lighter, and you want your text to be, say, black. So, that's a little harder on images you have to get like really light images for you to kind of pull that off. But I mean, it's a possibility. So those are two options with cards like this. Now, this card is set up in a similar way because, you know, if you use text on top of like really complex images, you're just not going to get the contrast at all. And I would actually, you know, not try to do anything like that. And I would create like a new container like I have built in this card. So I have like a main information container, and then just the whole background of the card is the actual image. You know, you can do a couple things with this container though. Like you can actually, like if I go into and make it black, I can decrease the opacity a bit. Or, you know, it's, I can like actually turn it into a gradient if I wanted to. So I can, you know, maybe swap these around. And this maybe still is like at like something like 50%. And the whole layer is at like 100%. So I mean, let's see. Lots of options you can work with, but it really is going to depend on the imagery as well. Something you can't really control is like, you know, how the image contrast, like the actual image settings work on like smaller grid items in comparison to like one main image that you may not change for months at a time. Whereas these may change like weekly or like monthly, and over again, you may have like 10 variations of them. So it's just a pain to kind of deal with that. And then the last option is, I mean, there are going to be scenarios. This image actually has a lot of like possibility for contrast, but I just like grabbed this from Airbnb's site. You can just have like the image like this. I mean, and the image above and text below. This is when you know that you don't want to deal with anything in regards to, you know, contrast issues. This is like that last resort where it's extremely legible. It's going to be on like white background like this. So let me just create that white background. I'm holding Option Command. It's going to be Option Control on Windows, so I don't mess with the content within and make it scale or anything. But like that is going to be like your ultimate contrast. So you don't need to worry about anything like this or like this. So those are the different ways you can work with imagery and text within Figma. Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are going to be working on some cool things with illustrations, but before we can do that, I want to talk about plugins. So there are a variety of different plugins you can use for illustrations. I'm going to give you 3. And these are the 3 I use to get a bunch of illustrations like this. Super cool stuff. So let's jump in. The first plugin I am going to illustrate on how to use is called Blush. So this is what Blush looks like. Now, it isn't necessarily free. It's going to be a paid resource, but they will allow you to actually just export PNGs in medium size. So definitely really great if you want to grab like a resource like this or like that and, bring that in. So now I have it. I won't be able to actually like edit that resource here. It will allow me to, edit different resources and like add to it some resources. Some illustrations have like stuff like this. Let me try and find one. Here we go. So say there's like, this is another resource. We can add like characters. There'll be certain things where we can add like different elements, like is it going to be red? Is it going to be, are they going to have like these arms? So, although you won't be able to edit them directly within Figma, which is unfortunate, you can still have a lot of flexibility with some of those illustrations. So that is one option. Another option is another one called Illustrations. I really like this one too, because these give you the actual vector file. So, if you want to just drag that in, you can edit those colors within Figma to whatever color you want. And, they have different variations. So they have like doodles, open peeps. If you want to create your own with like, the humans versions. This is from the creators called Pablo Stallion. He's a really good Designer and Illustrator. And you have like things like some of these 3D packs over here that you can just drag in. These are going to be just like straight up images, but that's okay. So a lot of these will be mostly vectors, but there are several that are going to be like images. So this one's another vector. So another great resource. These are all free resources. And the last one that I really love is called Streamline. And essentially Streamline is going to give you a bunch of different things. You can get free icons here. You can get free illustrations. There's a bunch, and you can see I have a bunch over here, but you know, you can grab those free ones and they're going to be all vector versions of those files. So you can adjust different pieces of them. You can also go into the home, and if say I want to go into, you know, one that I didn't see up there, you know, some of these other versions will give you free icons. So if I wanted to, you know, grab one of those illustrations, I can grab one of those illustrations like that, and I can grab different icons as well, or emojis, different elements like that. So really, really great resource. And you're going to need those plugins to continue on with the rest of the course, because they're going to really help you get some nice visual assets into your designs really quickly. Hey everyone, we are going to be using some illustrations. You can use the illustrations that we have here, or you can find some new ones with the new plugins that we have, like Streamline or Blush or Illustrations. Those Figma plugins are really cool. Now, I have a little setup going already, and you know, I haven't really given too much thought to the copy underneath here. I have like, you know, 2 steps right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create 3 versions. We have like one version that says like find the right products for you. I'm going to try and create like an onboarding flow, and you can work with me because it's set up with like auto layout really easily. What's happening here in the frame is this spot here, it's set, everything is set to, you know, to space between. So that means when you throw an item in here, you know, it's going to be between this header and this footer area. And the container size is essentially fixed, so it's not going to move. It's just going to fit nicely within there and keep everything else nice and neat. So everything's ready for you to go. You can make your own. You can replace the font. If you want to work alongside me, go ahead. And here we go. So we have one screen here where it says like something like find the right products for you. Another onboarding screen may say something like your order delivered quickly, or we could see something along the lines of like get your order super fast and for free. So something like that. So I'm just going to work on 2 actually. So the first one is like, okay, we're going to find the right products for you. The second order is going to be something like, okay, get your order super fast and for free. Super fast, and the shipping is on us. Maybe that sounds a little bit better. Okay, so like I said, you can just grab one of these, you know, illustrations if you want, and just like, I'm gonna just hold Option while I grab it, or it's gonna be Alt, and I'm gonna just throw it in there and sneak it in the container. And then I'm going to shrink it down. So like you can just throw those illustrations in there. I have a bunch of different options here, and I like this one because if you're going to go with like illustrations for your like onboarding screens or throughout your app, you need to ensure that they're all very consistent. So these ones are pretty nice. I like them. I don't know, there's a lot of them that were free. You know, it basically illustrates what I'm trying to, you know, do here. Who knows, like, will these illustrations be something that I'm going to, you know, use right till the very end of our product? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know yet, but I'm trying to establish some sort of visual style as well. So using some of visual assets will really help you, you know, build that brand, whether it's with imagery, like actual photography, and then that type of photography that you're going to use, or if it's going to be like actual illustrations. So I'm going to use illustrations here, and these are the illustrations for from one of the plugins that I'm using. here we go. Okay, so we know that our colors for our product aren't going to be, super in line with this. So we can go ahead and actually swap them a bit. So like I've been using some purple, which has been really cool. And, we can bring in that brand yellow a bit. We don't have a style for it, but this purple is really nice. And then for this one, like, we can, mix and match some of the other colors that we have. So for the background here, it can be like that blue that I've been using time and time again. So something like that. And then the yellow here can be maybe something like the green. So something like along the lines of like that. Or you can actually like use the yellow as like the main accent and kind of swap between the two. So over here, like instead of using the yellow, we can use that like that pale purple. And then over here, we can use that yellow. Oops. Like that. So we'll use like yellow for like these little like icons or these little glyphs of some sort. And then the main colors will be like those pastels that are accents. And there we go. Like already we've started to create some really nice like onboarding screens. These actually starting to look like more high fidelity screens. Maybe we need to like up the size of the buttons a bit. So maybe they're like 56 or something like that. They're like really chunky buttons, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're like something like, I don't know, they're 48 or something. Like that's when we're going to come in and really like add, the colors and, specify if there's like maybe like a logo up here or something like that, or any other UI elements. But that's how you can just start plugging different illustrations in. So if I like make a copy of this and just like illustrate how I would do it from the plugin directly, I'd go into something like Streamline. I'd go into my illustrations. I'm just going to go into the free section right now. And this one's about finding the right product. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to use this, like I'm going to make sure that all the products are the same, or so all the imagery is the same here. So like it could be this lady that's searching for products. It says coding, but I mean, I think it's going to work regardless. Oops. Here, let me delete this image in here. There we go. So we're going to just place it right in the middle, and then we're going to shrink it down and get into each and every group. And so like we have a pretty cool vector illustration, and now we can, maybe we use, like I said, maybe it's those brand colors like this. And maybe we can come in here and select each individual like items. Something like that, and we can make them like yellow. This can probably get removed. So that's the great thing about some of these other items, because we can either move them around, or we can, play with them a bit just to bring in like different colors and stuff like that. And, this one's about coding, but nobody would know the difference between that now and looking at it with this text here. So you can kind of make the illustrations the way you want them like that. So that's how you would build your own onboarding screens and use illustrations in them. Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are going to be working on icons, but I want to talk about some plugins first that you're going to need. So I like using several different plugins. The 2 or 3 main plugins that I use for icons are material design icons. This is when I am absolutely in a rush and I need to drag in some iconography super quickly. You can specify what size you want to bring them in. Usually I'm bringing them at 24 by 24 pixels. So you can do that really easily. That is one of the ways I use it with, just like when I'm designing. So material design icons is super helpful. Definitely grab this plugin. Another plugin I like to use is something called Iconify, and this one's okay. This one's great for finding a variety of like specialized icons. So if I want to look for, say, like an icon like house, I can come in here and just grab like a different version of that house if it's like highly specialized. I will say though, if you are working on icons and your like product has a bunch of icons, keep them all the same from the same family, whether it's material design icons or whatever icon family that you find. Like over here, you can specify that I want to, only see ones from, say, Google Material Design or Icon Park Solid or Font Awesome or whatever. So, just keep everything super consistent. The last one I do really love is Streamline Icons. So you can come in here, you can get illustrations here, elements, emojis, but you can come in here and grab a bunch. They have 1,000 free core line icons. Really, really helpful if you just need some nice icons. You can build a whole font family from here just by, putting them all within one frame and then turning them into components and then reusing them across that file if you really need to. Similarly, how I've done in the past. So these are the 3 different plugins that I think you should definitely grab just if you need icons quickly or if you're just going to build based off of some of the families that they provide. Hey everyone, and welcome back. Let's talk about a tool that I really love. It's called the pen tool, and the pen tool in Figma works a little differently than what you may be used to. So what is this pen tool? So let's talk first about vector networks. I'm going to first create a circle. Now, if I double click into this circle, I can see the vector networks. So the vector networks are one of the most unique features in Figma. Most pen tools, so you can draw a circle with a pen tool if you want, but most pen tools will draw paths in a loop with a defined direction. So that means they always want to reconnect to their original point. Meaning, if I have the pen tool here, if I press P, I can grab it, but they are going to make me somehow, finish this shape in most design tools. Now in Figma, you don't need to do that. Vector networks do not have a direction and can fork off in different directions without requiring a separate path object to be created. So what that means is with the pen tool, I can go like this and then that way. And then I can, press V or just press like I'm done. So it can be a part of this, or I can go like this, press V. I can click here, press the pen tool again. Here, press the pen tool again, press V, then click on the middle, press the pen tool again. And now I've created this cool little cross or whatever you want to create. And then I can even bring these points in if I want to make sure they're all equal. And I can also just move them like that. So really cool stuff you can do with the pen tool if you're making some custom shapes. Now, complex objects can then be created within the same object like I just showcased, with the same properties much faster than they could be drawn using traditional vector paths and other types of tools. Now let's talk about creating. So the way to create a vector network is to press P, or you can access it right here, and you're going to be in this kind of editing state. Vector edit mode lets you select, adjust, or change properties of individual points, lines, or entire shapes. So what that means is when I'm editing an object, I can interact with the existing points and the lines between them. So I can grab this point, I can do that. I can also plot additional points by using, just the pen tool if I want to. And I can also adjust like fills. I can add Bezier curves, which will allow me to like curve. So say I have, let's start from scratch here. If I have my own pen tool and I, make this weird shape, I can do that. And then I can come in and grab one of these curves, the Bezier curves, click a point and add it. I can also delete that by just clicking on it, adding new ones. I can come in here and delete that if I want to. The thing is, it's going to be a shape of its own. Like it's gonna come in as like a stroke. So when you create a shape here, it's coming in as a stroke. You can delete that stroke and add a fill if you want to. So really cool. The other thing is you can come in and individually play with the corners. So if I created this weird rectangle, I can, go into the point around this corner. I can also select something big as a number. You can do stuff like that, which is really, really cool. You can also go into like your stroke over here and set like the cap. So I can say like I want a rounded cap, which just faintly rounds that cap in comparison to the other ones. So really, really helpful. And that's basically how you're going to use the pen tool in Figma to create some shapes. I know I didn't create like any crazy shapes, but that is how you're going to use it. Hey everyone, we are going to get into creating our very own icons using the pen tool. So let's jump right in. I'm going to show you how easy it is. So before we start, I'm going to just turn on my grid. You can do that over here and by turning on your layout grids. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a frame. And it's going to be 24 pixels by 24 pixels. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rename it. I'm just going to call it icon. And we can duplicate it. Oops, first let's actually create a layout grid. So before we actually start, we need to actually have a grid. I'm going to call my grid, I'm just going to have like a 1 pixel regular grid at the top. It's going to help us just have better measurements. So I'm going to just duplicate that. So we have a bunch. The next thing I'm going to do is let's start with a check mark. You'll see that it's pretty simple. I'm going to select P from my pen tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on one of these points and hold down Shift to one of these points, hold down Shift again to one of these points. And there we go. We've created this. And we can adjust the stroke on the side. And now we can actually come in and adjust the caps to be rounded. The endpoints can be rounded here. The joint is going to be rounded. And we're going to have another rounded cap. And then we can, adjust this a bit. But you can create some pretty easy components just like that for icons. So that's my first icon. I'm going to just center that within. And then I'm going to come and drag it into this file here. Over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shrink this one a little bit more, shrink this one too. And to create an outline, you can do a couple of different things. You can, I'm going to press circle, the ellipse tool, and just drag that in here. Make sure that that is centered nicely. And I'm going to send it to the back with that bracket shortcut, which is this one right here. So now that that's sent to the back, I'm going to just make it black. There it is. I'm going to send that to the back. And then I'm going to make this one white. So you can do a couple things here. You can either make it white and just call it a day, or you can make another copy and, you know, we can actually play around with the size of this a bit. Like we can bring in this point if you want, and I would make those changes here as well. And then if you go to right click, and if you have like things like a stroke, or if you have like line vector items, stuff like that, what you're going to do is you're going to outline stroke. So that's going to take the stroke away. Now it's going to be like a total fill. And if you select both of them, we can go into our Boolean options and use subtract. So now it's going to be an actual see-through layer. You see how you can see a bit of the frame in here? So now that's a see-through layer, and then you can go in even further and flatten it by using Command or Control E. So that's flattened now, and that's like a full icon that you can have like overlaying, or you can leave it the same there. So, oops, I'm just going to grab this point and clean it up a bit. But that is how you make a check in a circle. Let's get into something a bit more complex. We have some circles here, a cloud download button. I'm going to create 3 different circles. So I'm going to go like this, put one on this side, one on this side in the middle, and make this one bigger. Maybe that's a little too big. Okay, so I have 3 circles here. The one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and we can modify it. Oops. Take that point, I'm going to bring it down here. And then that Bezier curve, I'm going to delete it. And now we have a pretty cool cloud icon here. So we can go ahead and use the Boolean operation, the union selection, Command E or Control E, and now it's black. I'm going to use my color picker by pressing I to select that. Now we can actually create our very own arrow tool. So we can use pen tool to just go from top to bottom and then up again. And press a V, go back to here, press P, come back up, try to match that at that 45-degree angle like that. You see the red lines. And then I'm going to make sure that that is selected as F. So now we can, you know, come in here and size it accordingly, bring it down a bit. I'm done editing there. And then we can adjust the caps on each. So I'm going to just go in, round it. I'm going to make this one round as well. Make this one rounded as well. And another rounded cap. And then bring that in. Oops. And there you go. And now we have our own download icon. You can do the same thing here that we did here. You can turn this into like a shape by right clicking and pressing outline stroke. So it turns it into an actual vector shape. Or you can leave it as like that vector network, like that, like the actual stroke. Now this one, location tool. So this one's actually really easy. You can just create a square like this. I'm going to make it black by pressing I to get the color picker. I'm going to go back to V and get my moving tool here, and I'm going to double click. I'm going to grab this point, and by holding shift, I'm going to just drag it there. And now I've created my own location tool. Pretty cool stuff, eh? And we have a map pin. I'm going to press circle to get a big circle, the ellipse tool. And I'm going to grab another one. I'm going to make a copy of this one on top of it and then shrink it. So this is going to be white. So I'm just going to grab white from up there. This is going to be black, and I'll grab black from there. And what I'm going to do is, once again, getting into that vector edit mode and dragging it down. Now here is where we're going to have some fun. Like I'm going to delete that Bezier curve on that side. I'm going to delete this one on that side. I'm going to take this one and move this by holding shift. I'm just going to move it down a bit. I'm just going to try and match that up. I think that's where it is. It's on this line here. Oh, I went down one too many. So that's going to be our curve there. Now this is pointed. So what we can do here is we can come up here and press like 1 or 2. You can bring that down a bit more. And there you go. You have your own map pin icon. So I would definitely just jump in here and start playing with it. Get comfortable with the pen tool and using it. The heart has always been like a very hard shape for me to make personally. I hate making hearts. So I basically found a pretty easy cheat code here. You just, plot something on your grid, 45-degree angle by pressing shift while holding your pen tool. Make a little thing like that, a little V. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just ramp up this. Then we can come in and mess with things like the rounded ends. Okay. And there we go. I'm going to actually just bring this in a bit more. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click into here. I'm going to click the Bezier curve and add one. And add one here. So you can kind of control, oops. I'm going to hold shift while trying to match that up with this one. But there you go. You can even come in here and, set like some rounded edge. Oop. Wow. One. Oh, maybe that's just, a little too much. We can also just go in here and just round the end a bit if you want. But we can right click on this. I'm going to bring this in just a little bit. Just like that. And I'm going to right click and go to outline stroke. But we can come right here into this area here and just press like 1 to round that end up right off. And there we go. We've created our own heart icon alongside a map, location, download, and variations of a check, all with simple little movements with the pen tool. This is really great.